welcome back. The Chronicles of, I guess, is the most popular name you'll hear in a long while, Evans. And that's one of the spin-off of what happened with the Evans, the great kidnapper who's been nabbed by the police and waiting for his day in court, has been regaling us with stories about just exactly what it's about. Just the other day, he took security operatives to a house that he was keeping victims. Just one of 3 houses in Lagos, he says, that was a kidnap den. With us to look at background check is what we're looking at this morning. He was a driver at some point in time and used the opportunity to fleece his employers and also kidnap one of his boss's children at some point in time, running away with millions of naira during this period in his life. We have Frank Oyorhigho, who is a security consultant, author of a fantastic book I read reading some time back, National Security, the Background Check Option. So he's the man for the discussion on background check this morning. With him, we're getting also comments and analysis and perspectives from Abuja with Edward Amaga, who is a legal practitioner. He's just getting used to Abuja hospitality. Edward Amaga is a legal practitioner. We'll come back to you in just a moment, but let's talk with Frank Oyorhigho here, first and foremost. With this thing about background check with Evans, he was a driver at some point in time. Just going through his narrative just makes me realize just how the loopholes we have oftentimes in the hiring of people who are close. We've talked about this over and over again, but oftentimes it does appear that people who are exposed politically, even those in the businesses, the big tycoons and all, and the rest of them don't pay attention to who their drivers are, or the security men, or the chefs, or the house assistants. Tell us what you make of the fact that we have agencies who are supposed to vet people who are put into this sort of position, but oftentimes fall short. What exactly is the problem?
Well, thank you. The problem is not the problem of agency. The problem is because the government has not looked at that side in terms of legislating on it. We do insurance of our cars, not because we're interested in doing insurance, but because it's compulsory. And if you don't do it, you'll be penalized for it. So I think we've reached a point where the government need to legislate on background check so that if you don't do background check and issues arise from it, you will be prosecuted for not doing it. So that becomes a culture. So at a point in our life, even as individuals, you know that, okay, if I want to hire this person, I need to do professional background check. Now, we try to do it, actually, by making phone calls, by probably giving them one form to fill, and they take the form themselves to the place and come back with the form. You don't know, you pick a picture on the floor and put on it and say, this is my guarantor, and you take that hooker, line and sinker and you put it in your file. So when something happens and you now call the number does not, it doesn't go through. And if you eventually go to the place it says he's leaving or this is his guarantor, the man says, this is my picture actually, but I didn't give this person my picture. So that's why I would say, if it is professionally done, if the government is involved, then apart from the police, now we are not talking of investigation. Now, because investigation presupposes that a crime has been committed. But you're also talking of saying, verify information that you are given. Right. Simple. That's why we call it background check. But when sometimes you say background check, what comes to mind is crime. But what we're just saying is, go to the background, find the information I've been giving you. This person says, okay, he's worked here, he's lived here, or he's so person. Go and verify these pieces of information that you've been given, so that you juxtapose them with what is given. If they are true, then you can go on to the next level of employment. And when we say government should be involved, for this case of Evans, if government is involved and say background check is compulsory, that means the landlord will have to check his tenant, the tenant will have to check the landlord, the CDA will have to check people who own houses in the particular environment, and that makes it simple, makes it easier for you to know who is your neighbor. But if we just leave it and say, okay, it's optional, people, Nigerians take risk a lot. We are very reactive people. So what background check is being proactive. So if you leave it for the people, 20,000 naira, 30,000 naira you're going to pay for your background check. People will say it's too much. But at the same time, when the car is stolen, you are willing to give 500,000 naira for the person who will give information for the recovery of the car. So that's why we say it's not just the agency, but government should legislate on background check and make it compulsory so that it will help the citizens themselves push them to do something. But now, if you notice that if it becomes compulsory, even the neighbors themselves will say, now it's compulsory, I need to know who my neighbor is. Whether they are going to do it professionally, whether they're going to do it amateurly, but that consciousness that we need to do this. Because if something happens tomorrow, the whole people in the neighborhood will be victims. So that's why we're saying it's not the agency that has a problem, but government is too relaxed on it.
All right, now, you talked so much about background check.
Yes.
And as that being the first level, the basic level, let's look at the next level of employment. While we talk about somebody who seems from a seemingly good home, I mean, Evans, in this case, has a mother, has a father, who benefited from the proceeds of his kidnapping business. But it would seem that before kidnapping, if a background check was done on him, he probably would seem like a normal person. What about the character of the person that you're about to employ? In some cases, there are assessments that are done on people's characters. Does that even come into place in situations like this when you're employing people? Can you do that? Do a character assessment of the person you're about to employ?
Now, there's no foolproof that you can access a person's character, but you can go back in time to trace the person's lifestyle, to give you a picture of what the person is. For instance, if I want to hire a driver, now I won't just check who he is. I will check 2, 3, 4 places where he has worked before.
And that's all part of the background check.
They have part of the background check. So, number one, I check his employer, who is previous employers. What is this person's character? What can you say of the person? The first person, the second person, the third person, I'll juxtapose the information I gather from these 3 people to know.
Where does that leave people who are just beginning to?
Yes, that's number one. Then number 2, he has people who stand for him as guarantors and referees. Now, these days, nobody would ignorantly say I'm a guarantor because they know the implication of being a guarantor. And then when you are seeking for the guarantor of the person, you don't just go to the person and say, oh, are you guaranteeing this person? Yes, no. There are steps, there are forms, there are questions that you ask. Questions that the person, if he's willing to be a guarantor, it means he knows this person very well, because those questions are questions that can implicate you and tie you down for life. So if you say, if this person commits a crime, are you willing to indemnify him? And he says yes. Then that means he knows what he's saying. So these are some of the questions. Then even the neighborhood, what you call neighborhood check, what you call address confirmation. Now in the neighborhood, this person, in the neighborhood check, this person, who is he? You know him. Where do you know he works? There's no matter how much you try to you try to hide your character, in the neighborhood, 2, 3, 4 persons will know you if background check becomes compulsory. Now, Evans, nobody knows him because nobody made an attempt to know him. So everybody's,
It's a new society where we tend to mind our own business.
Exactly.
In the 80s, it was different.
Even in African cosmology, everybody is everybody's neighbor.
But it's different these days.
It's different these days. That's why we're saying that. Now, if you leave it to every man, to himself, with the current system of lifestyle, nobody knows what goes on in the other compound. One, you have high fences because of insecurity. Now you have high fences because people don't want to know what is going on in their compound. So first thing, demolish the fence, put a fence that is lower, people can see. But far and above that, if background check becomes compulsory, it means that the chairman of the CDA will have that responsibility of knowing each person in that environment. It's a long haul, but over time, if the government is serious about it, now we have the Lagos State Neighborhood Watch.
Right.
Now, the background check can work with these people to make the neighborhood safer, because if you have a cluster of environment, and you say, okay, from this place to that place is manned by, you have an office of the Neighborhood Watch, and the CDA chairman, who knows every house owner, deposits information to the Neighborhood Watch and say, in this neighborhood, I'm the chairman of the CDA here, these are the people that lives in this neighborhood. Mr. A does this, Mr. B does that, Mr. C does that, and it's deposited there. So that means the person, at least, if nobody knows everybody, the CDA chairman knows the people in his area. And that puts the tenant as well, the owners, the various owners of the houses who knows their tenants, also deposit information of their tenants to the Lagos State Neighborhood Watch in that environment. So by and large, you now know people around you. So in terms of the driver, in terms of that, it behoves on the individuals to know what information is looking for. Neighborhood check will tell you what the neighbor is saying about these people. And don't forget, the people like drivers, housemaid, they don't have that luxury of living an environment exclusively. They must live with an environment where people know them. So the neighborhood check will do that. Then the address confirmation. It says he lives at house XYZ. You go to the house and verify, does he actually live here? In the course of finding out if he lives there, you also be able to ask the kind of job he does. So it's a conscious effort. It's not by default. There has to be a conscious effort, both the people and the government. But the government has to lead the fight by making it compulsory and backing it up with legislation.
All right. We're going to cross over to Abuja. Plenty of food for thought. Edward Amagas, legal practitioner. Great to have Edward join us this morning. But plenty of food for thought from Frank here. And tell us what you make of the fact that he's flown a kite with respect to having legislation on this. If you did the statistics on the kind of cases you're getting, kidnapping and the people involved, you find out oftentimes that the major actors oftentimes have been people who are close to the victims. If it's in the driver, it's the chef, or the laundryman, people who work directly with domestic staff with the people who have been abducted. If you were going to propose legislation, for example, what do you think would be the essential ingredients, for example, in the bill proposed to the National Assembly saying this is what we think should be done in terms of background checks for domestic hiring?
Okay, thank you very much, presenter. Good morning. The issue of kidnapping has been on the forefront of national issues recently. You will agree with me that the rate of kidnapping in Nigeria, if you judge going by African statistics, is about the highest. And then these kidnappers do not have respect for anybody. They could kidnap the rich, they could kidnap the poor, they could kidnap the brothers and sisters of the rich and poor. They kidnap domestic staff, around the offices and all that. So if you look at what my fellow person has said here in Lagos, the issue of background check is what should be made very, very compulsory. Because we realized when we were working in Lagos that somebody who presented the guarantorship form of another person in Ogun State was discovered that after some time when he stole a car, it was discovered that the person he presented as guarantor had died 4 years before that time. It was a surprise because the company didn't go to Ogun State to do a check. So coming back to the issue of background check, there are enough legislations on kidnapping already. Death penalty, a lot of states have domesticated the laws, but little has been done in terms of background check. Just recently we begin to hear of consultants, who deal on that area of checking for employers. So it is incumbent upon government to take it as a matter of urgency and make it compulsory, by virtue of a bill to the National Assembly, either a private bill or from the executive or from the civil society angle, saying this has to be done. There must be a legislation on if you must hire somebody as a personal staff, as a staff in your office, you don't just collect forms and passport and keep. You must go as far as checking the guarantor, checking the history of the person you are hiring, to the extent that even to his village where he is schooled. I mean, the rate is too much. So if that is done and it is made a law, you will discover that we'll be able to reduce this whole challenge of kidnapping, especially by domestic staff.
Still on legislation on deterring kidnappers and the likes, let's look at Lagos State. Let's put out serious penalties for kidnappers. Do you think that in any way would deter crime or crime of that sort in Lagos? We're talking about even capital punishment if anybody dies in the hands of the kidnapper. Do you think that would help?
Yes, that is the law. It's a very excellent law. If anybody is involved in kidnapping, the law says death penalty. But then a lot of people say kidnapping is associated with unemployment, and the standard of living is low in the country and all that. But I think otherwise, because a crime is a crime, no matter how you call it. The man who kidnaps is as guilty as the man who stole a goat in the marketplace. So the issue of unemployment doesn't come in at all. Every kidnapper has to be treated like a common criminal. And then by the virtue of the death penalty imposed already, we have seen recently that it has been helpful. It has been helpful in the sense that people, the rate is still there, but gradually you see that people, as they implement the laws. Another thing is implementation of the laws. When you say in Lagos, Edo State, Delta, even FCT, if somebody dies in the hands of the kidnapper, death penalty. The question again is, how many of these people have been taken to the gallows, for people to know that this ABC person that was arrested has been killed. And that has to do with the government policies on execution of capital punishment. But by and large, I agree completely that the death penalty imposed on kidnappers, especially when somebody dies in their hand, is a very good development.
A lot of these discussions have happened on the background of Evans, a notorious kidnapper who was recently nabbed in Lagos. And people have been drawing lessons and spin-offs from many things that have happened, saying, this is what we have gathered. I'm sure the police and investigators will perhaps gather around some table and, try to plot left, right, and center, saying what they have learned. Many narratives, probably they're beginning to understand how the kidnapping business happens, safe homes for kidnap dens and all of that. The different cooks it takes to make this kidnap soup obviously is beginning to look complete, because we have different actors in different areas playing a different role. But tell me, what has been the most striking thing you've learned as a lawyer with the Evans case? Do you think that people really need to start to think about?
Yes, the case of the Chukwudi, a.k.a. Evans, is a striking case. In fact, we have not recovered from the shock we received from one human being who kidnap and collect ransom, sometimes in hard currency, in dollars and pounds. He was living a luxurious life in a place, Magodo in Lagos. And over time, he was just there. But I think what we have learned from that breakthrough by the Nigerian security services is that people actually watch whatever you do in your neighborhood. People watch. And as they watch, you may not know that they are watching. As they watch, some of them who are bold enough are able to blow the whistle, are able to report to the police. And that is what I encourage all Nigerians to do. This morning when I was driving out of my gate, I discovered that the security men at the gate already knew me. I never knew. I was passing, they said, barrister, just pass, we know you. So people should begin to know their neighbors. And as you know your neighbor, imagine if you know that somebody does the business of kidnapping, you are encouraged to quickly, go to the necessary security place and report, like it happened in the case of Evans. People should not allow criminals to live in our midst as if they are normal. The religious leaders have a role to play. The family has a lot of role to play. Of course, the government and the security agents has a lot of role to play in that dimension. Unless we take it as a collective responsibility that, yes, we must not allow criminals of any sort live around us, whether he's rich or he's poor or he's giving things to the needy around in the guise of being a philanthropist. So the case of Evans is a big breakthrough for the Nigerian government, and we hope to see more of those breakthroughs coming up in the few months ahead, considering the renewed effort by the security agents to put Nigeria, completely rid Nigeria out of crime and criminality.
Now let me ask a question. What do you think Evans' play is at this point? He seems to be cooperating with the police, talking about how much he gave his father, talking about where he held his victims. He's singing like a canary. So what do you think the play is at this point, and do you think it will make things easier for him before the law?
Yes, as far as we are concerned, who are not taking up the job of the police and the security agents, but as experts in that field who have been involved in both prosecution and defense, we know that all these things are matters that may or may not soften his case either, because the information he's giving now, like he said in one of the quotes, he said, "I have given up. I am ready to die now. I have done all manner of things in this world. There's nothing else I need to do." So that is a man who has surrendered to his fate. And what is his fate? His fate is the law. And what is the law? The law is the death penalty. So I don't think that whether he gives information about where the billions are, where the mansions are, or whatever, that will not bend the hand of the law in this case. The case of Evans has to be made a practical example for Nigerians, for the whole world to know that kidnapping is no longer a good business anywhere in the country. And so we are saying the police, with all respect, must not sweep the case under the carpet. We realize that he was arrested some time ago, but the next thing they saw him moving about. So now that he has been arrested like this, and he seems to be the king of kidnappers in the whole country. So how will you allow that kind of a person to move on the street as if he's a normal human being? I, as a person, the next door neighbor by my side, will not be comfortable at all. And then some people may think that, after all, it is good to engage in crime because I see Mr. A is moving on the street and nothing has happened to him. So I believe that with this achievement so far, we will be hearing sooner or later that the Nigerian police will not only prosecute him, but when he is found guilty, they will make sure that he faces the appropriate wrath of the law.
All right. Let's take a breather here, Edward Umaga, as a legal practitioner. We'll get back to you just in a moment, but let's talk to Frank Oyorhigho here in Lagos. Frank, visited the book National Security Background Check Option. I've been going through this for a couple of weeks. Shouldn't be, if it was a fiction novel, I guess it'd probably be faster, but a lot of job you've put into them, of course, a lot of responsibility for the different people and different players. He's mentioned the church. We've talked about the security agents. We've talked about neighborhood watch, security men at the neighborhood. Everyone does appear to have a role. With what you've put in here, I guess you can shed some light on what you think are the roles for different people, because suddenly as this envelope is being opened, I suddenly realized that it does look like an insurmountable task everyone has to play. Would you break it down for us, please?
Now, yes, everyone has a role to play, like I've said, and like I said in the book, and that's why we tagged it National Security, the background check option. So if we want to achieve national security, rather than depending on the hardware, let's come back to proactive nature. And that's where the law on the law on kidnapping that stipulates that death penalty for culprit is, for me, I think we should work harder in preventing it than prosecuting. It's when you catch that you prosecute. What if you don't catch the person? So preventing it is a little much more easier and cheaper, and that's what this book is about. So everyone has a role to play, but the person who will lead this role is the government. That's why we say the government must be deeply involved, so that when government is involved, the driver will know that it's not easy now to hide information. Even the security man, now the police is talking too much on this Evans case. They're revealing too much information, and that will help the kidnappers who are at large to know how to cover their tracks. So I think the police should just inform us that, okay, we are doing X, Y, Z, and leave it at that. Telling us how he uses 260 SIM, telling us how the kind of phone he bought. Even I didn't know that there are some phones that you can't track. Then if I'm a kidnapper, I think I should look for money and buy those kind of phones. So the police should just relax. They should be circumspect in what they say, and that's on one side. And because everybody should be involved, even the network providers too should be involved. Now, the time where you now register SIM on the street should be stopped. I remember when GSM came newly, when you register your SIM as if you are opening a bank account. That is also an area we need to look at, so that people don't have, can a man have 200 and something SIMs? I'm sure you register with different names, But if you go and register your SIM with the service provider in their office with your driver's license or a federal recognized...
it also negates the fact that you put a thumb print, I believe, or a print of your forefinger. So what happens? We know that no two prints are the same.
Exactly. So now I'm coming to that. So now you notice that what they do is, if I register a SIM today and I want to register tomorrow, it has no relationship with what I did yesterday. Everything is isolated, but it shouldn't be so. Like when you have, if you have in your phone, one person can have 3, 4, 5 numbers. So there are fields that you put the numbers on that one name. That's the same way they should register SIM. So if I come and register my SIM, there should be a way that once they plug in, they knock in my name, it should just bring out the ones that I've registered before. So they just open another field and put that number in that field. That means just on one name you have 3, 4 numbers, not you have 5 numbers, 5 names, 5 pictures. So that is one thing the network provider should look at as part of prevention of this kidnap and
should link the numbers. That means they should work together.
They should work together, yes.
Okay, now I need to talk about, based on some of the things that information will also come out of this issue with Evans. His family came out saying they didn't know that he was involved in such. But the wife collected up to 20 million from him for house rent. Let's talk about the part the family plays and the effect of exposing herself and her children on social media, on conventional media like that, the implication. Now, we also see a confession. His dad had earlier said he had no idea what his son was into, but received generous gifts of an SUV and 3 million naira to start his piggery business. So how much should family members be involved in checking, how their members spend money? And take, for instance, also, we have situations where people are very generous in church. You have people who donate tens of millions of naira and all of that. But these things are accepted by religious leaders because they're looking for the church to grow in certain ways. Let me use the church as an example now. So how do we begin to manage these things?
See, that's the area where we said it's not just bringing out the law. The people, the orientation has to change. Now, these things don't happen in those days where family union is taken seriously, where mommy and daddy will have to, and the children will have to eat on the same table every night and wake up in the morning and do devotion and all that for Christians and do devotions. These things have been watered down because of maybe economical issues and civilization. So we need the Nigerian orientation agency need to go back and bring this family union so that each family will know what their children do. And then again, we also, let me give you an example. A friend of mine, a very close friend of mine, family friend of mine, wanted to get a job, and he went to somebody. I said, you would have brought your CV. Let me. They said, no, how can I give my CV? You that is doing background check, you now know that some of the things are put there. Now, that consciousness has come to that person. So if the issue of background check, the issue of integrity is played up by the government, played up by agencies, you discover that consciousness will come to people. So whenever they are doing anything, they'll be conscious of the fact that if this thing is found out, I will be in big trouble. So we need to do that. Then again, you talk about Evans and family, and they say, of course they will deny, even if they are beneficiaries of whatever he has been doing. Probably as they are collecting, they're telling him, this thing is not good, stop it, but they are collecting. So now that he's in trouble, everybody will find their level. So it's not that civilization has come to put us in a very bad state. And then the social media too. And that's why we caution people, if you, especially Facebook and all that, you put your family, you get a job today, you put it there, you buy a new car today, you put it there, you are exposing yourself. Even when the people are not interested, they are tempted to want to, because there's inequality in the society and everybody wants to have a piece of the cake. So if we see that, oh, why this man is getting so much, let me get a piece of the cake from him if I can't get from the government. So we also need to be circumspect in the things that we say about ourselves, living large, showing off, So all these are a gamut of how to prevent ourselves from these problems.
All right, we're going to cross over. I'll take that as your closing remarks also too, because we're out of ammo, out of time. But we've got enough time for Edward Umaga in Abuja to give us the closing remarks on this subject, background check in hiring personal staff. So we get your closing remarks now.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. Good. So can we get your closing remarks? We're bringing the discussion to a close, so we get your remarks on this subject.
Okay. On the subject of under discussion, background check, like my colleague in Lagos has said, we have a lot to do. The people in the employment sector, the employers associations, should be able to come together, to push up a legislation to check some of these things. Because in Nigeria, people don't take certain things seriously unless there is a law to check it. And I always tell people, there are so many laws on ground to check some of these things. But unless we also create awareness about what is the law, and then what are the implications of this, even it's for the good of the person who is employing. For a person, I cannot employ somebody I have not checked, properly, through his school, through his wherever, where he worships, his community and all that. Because the economy is something else. The nation is turning into where people want to survive at all costs. So, like, by all means, the government should put on the shoes to be able to face the reality that if we must have a safe haven for everybody, to have employees who are good. I mean, the issue of background check has to be taken very, very seriously. And then legislation should be put up. So people should begin to write proposals in terms of bills. And then, like we had in the Freedom of Information Bill, the way it came up, sooner than later, some of these bills will be flying in the National Assembly.
All right. Thank you very much, Edward Umaga, the legal practitioner, background check in hiring staff. Thank you for your great comments and contribution. Never a more important time for us to know exactly who is your neighbor. Thank you, sir. And of course, Frank Oyorhigho, thank you very much. Frank Oyorhigho is a background check consultant, security analyst also too. Thank you very much, sir, for coming on the show. Wrote the book, National Security, the Background Check Option. It does look like national security, the background solution only. Thank you very much, sir, for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you so much for your time this morning. It's been a fantastic Monday morning on Today on STV. See you tomorrow. Have a fantastic day.